Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be making this double ruffled cami top. I love this top. It's very cute, very flirty, and it's kind of a loose fitting top. Anyway, for this tutorial it's going to be quite long because I go into a lot of details as to how I did everything, and also the best part is no serger was used for this pattern. So if you don't have a serger, you can rest assured that you're going to get this beautiful professional finish without needing a serger, which is anyway. Let's get into the tutorial. So the first thing you want to do is when you're printing your pages, you have the option of printing layers, meaning that you can print one size at a time. I'm going to be printing my size, which is an extra small. So you see I'm clicking on the eyes on the layers tab, but this can only be done on your PC, right? Anyway, you want to move on and you want to click actual size for printing or 100% scale, then print only one page and measure the box, making sure that it is measuring 100% like it's supposed to. Can't be too small, can't be too big, or else your pattern is going to be off. Anyway, focus on each page, on each PDF. You'll always see the section that says layout. It shows you how to, when you're putting your pages together and sticking them together, how they're supposed to be. And this is how they're supposed to be. It's supposed to be 6 pages per row. Now what I like to do is, you don't have to do this, but you know, do it is just go ahead and snip off the right side of each page as well as the bottom. For this pattern you are going to need you're going to need 2 meters of fabric. I used 1.5 and I barely just made it. The thing that took up so much space were the bias ruffles. Anyway, you want to go ahead and take your pages and, like I said, overlap them together and stick them together. We said six pages per row. So I'm using this poly cotton pattern fabric. This is my first time actually working with a fabric that has a pattern. I'm usually a solid type of fabric kind of girl. Anyway, you're going to be cutting your pieces along the selvage for the top pieces, like the front and the back, and you're going to be cutting your front on fold 2 pieces. The back needs to be 4 pieces. So I don't know what I did with the editing over there, but yeah, I don't know what was that, but anyway, just go ahead and cut all your pieces. So when you're cutting your ruffles are going to be cut on the bias. Make sure that they're cut on the bias, and so basically how you're going to cut them on the bias is fold your fabric along the selvage, then put your, there's going to be a part of your ruffles that shows that it should be cut on fold. If you put it along the selvage like it's shown, you will be able to cut them on the bias like that. See how that looks? Anyway, what I'm doing is the reason why I didn't make that dot into a closed dot, like basically the reason why I made the dot open is because I wanted you to be able to trace that curve, which is what's gonna, you know, make your bust rest beautifully. So trace that curve. After tracing that curve, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hand stitch my dot because there's that curve, right? So hand stitch it, and then we're going to take it to the sewing machine. So when you're sewing your dots, right, you always want to make sure that you do not go backwards when you get to the end of the dot. You just want to continue straight and then pull it out and then tie those threads. Anyway, as you can see, the bust is kind of protruding upwards because, you know, there's some cuppage there, which is what we want. Now I'm going to go ahead and take my straps, and what I'm going to do is I am going to just fold my straps and then I'm going to go ahead and just stitch them. These are like your typical straps. There's nothing dramatic happening. So yeah, so go ahead, cut those straps and then get your loop turner to turn the straps inside out, and then when you're done, press your straps so that it can be nice and flat. Yes, you definitely need that part. And then I did also make additional straps just so I can make my loops, and I'm cutting those in half. Later on I am going to cut them in half again so I can get 4 loops on each side. Right now I'm leaving them at 4. Now this is additional, this is like that professional stuff. So what I'm doing is I'm taking my back piece and measure however much you want to measure, and then cut that out, right, like how I did. We're gonna do that because we want to have an interfacing where we're going to be placing our loops. So go ahead and copy that. You just need 2 pieces of interfacing. Like I said, you can make them as wide as you want to, but obviously make them the same height as your piece. So this is me just going ahead cutting that interfacing, and I'm also going to notch the top of the interfacing so I know which side is supposed to go, how it's supposed to be directioned basically. So yeah, so I'm going to take them and then I'm going to go and iron that on. So I've taken my 2 of my back pieces and I've just decided, okay, these are the 2 back pieces where I'm going to put the interfacing on. Is this necessary? Yes, I would say this is necessary because it gives you a nice solid base to put your straps in, and everything just lays flat and beautiful. So I definitely recommend that you do this. Anyway, those are my back pieces. Now I want to take my front piece, right sides together, and I am going to be pinning it to my back piece. Now I forgot to mention that this pattern comes with a seam allowance already included. The seam allowance is 0.5 inches. So when you're taking your back piece and your front piece and you put them together at the side seams, you will notice that the back seems a little bit bigger than the front, right? A little bit longer. So I want you to know that this is completely normal, and if you overlap them at 0.5 inches, they will match up perfectly. Like you see what I'm talking about, that slight overlap, how the back piece just seems like it's a bit bigger. When you overlap them, put them together, pin them and sew them at that 0.5 inch seam allowance, everything is going to line up perfectly. So please do not panic and go to the Etsy store and be like, no, these pieces are not lining up. Like, no, they are going to 100% line up. Yeah, yes. And I forgot to mention that most of the patterns that I'm going to be working on have got seam allowance automatically added into them, just to make things easier for everyone, right? So yeah, there is a 0.5 inch seam allowance, 0.5 inch. You will see on your pattern pieces, it is written, I have written in your pattern pieces that 0.5 inch seam allowance is included. Anyway, let's go ahead and stitch that side seam. So now what you want to do is you're going to take your straps and you're going to be stitching them onto where they're supposed to be placed basically. So go ahead and stitch on your straps, but only stitch them onto the right side of one of the pieces, and this is how it's going to look, right? So ta-da, you're going to take your other piece and then you're going to put it right sides together and then pin it on, and then you're going to go ahead and stitch again, right? So this is how I do it, right? So what I'm doing is I'm going to start off by stitching the neckline, then I'm going to top stitch, then I'm going to stitch the armhole. Most people would go ahead and just stitch the armhole, the whole thing, the whole top seam. The problem with that is when you are now going ahead and doing your top stitch, you are not going to be able to reach the corners properly, you know what I mean? So it's better to be able to reach on the neckline from the corner of one strap to the corner of the other strap and be able to top stitch that, and then when you're doing the armholes, not be able to reach 100% the corner. So as you guys are stitching, I think you'll understand exactly what I'm talking about as you see how everything is being put together. So go ahead and just stitch that neckline, and then we're just gonna snip the curve on the neckline so that the neckline lays nice and flat. Just give it a little bit, a couple of, you know, clippings, and then I'm going to open it, take it to my iron it, and push my seam allowance towards my lining fabric, whichever fabric is going to be, you know, basically going to act as the lining. So this is what I was talking about. So now I'm stitching from one edge of the strap all the way to the other side, and I was able to top stitch to the top, basically to the top of that strap corner. Whoa, guys. I hope you understand what I'm saying. I'm so sorry if this sounds a bit messy, but I'm sure with the video shame, I know you guys 100% understand what I'm saying. So now I'm going to go ahead and just stitch my strap to the back. There is going to be a part where you notch. There is a notch for your straps on your pattern. So yes, go ahead and just stitch the strap first, and then I'm going to be closing it, and then I am going to stitch the armhole. Make sure that your seams are lining up, so that side seam needs to be lining up with the other side seam. So now let's go ahead and stitch that, and when we're done stitching that, we're going to do a top stitch again. So the top stitch is what prevents the fabric from, you know, protruding to the front or coming to the front and just looking like all messy. So it is very important to do that top stitch. Anyway, so the exact same thing that we did for our neckline is when you're done sewing that armhole slash back, you want to go ahead and just clip it where the armhole curves so that you can release that tension, and it's going to lay down nice and flat, which is what we want. And also I'm also clipping at that at the place where I've placed the straps, basically, so that I'm able to turn it inside out without a lot of bulkiness, right? So now I'm going to go ahead and do that top stitch like I said. So you'll notice that as I'm doing the top stitch, I'm not able to reach the tip of that of my strap placement in the front. I don't know what to call it. What do you call that? Like, what do you call it? But anyway, I'm top stitching. I won't be able to reach the tip, which is why I said it's better to be able to reach the entire tip on the neckline and leave some of the corner or the tip out when you're doing the armhole, versus going ahead and stitching the whole top seam and then having to do the lining. That way you're not able to reach the corner on each side, basically. So this is me trying to get to the corner as much as I can, you know, but you're not going to be able to, so it's okay, and that's okay. That's perfectly fine. So another thing that I want to say to you guys is, when you're sewing, always make sure that you're going to your iron and pressing things down, you know. So now this is me placing the straps. So remember the side that has the interfacing, that's where I'm stitching my straps onto. I know that you guys cannot see properly what I'm doing because of my hands. I wasn't thinking about that because I'm so used to just sewing without having a camera, but I'm going to be mindful of this next time. But basically I'm just stitching my straps onto that one side that has the interfacing, and then I'm going to fold it over and then stitch again. So this is the easiest way to stitch your straps, like your loops, I meant. So most people, when they're doing their loops, you would go in and fold your loops, and then sandwich your loops in between the two pieces, and then sew them, and then by the time you're done, you realize that they are not 100% positioned how you wanted them to be positioned. So that's why we do it like this, to avoid that. So now we're going to fold it over, and then we're going to go ahead and just stitch everything together at once, and then ta-da. And then when you're done, you're going to turn it inside out, press it down with the iron, and then we're going to complete a neat top stitch. This is what's going to give your clothing that professional edge, you know. So do a top stitch maybe about 2 or 3 millimeters away from those loops. And yeah, and also that top stitch, it's a nice, you know, professional finishing thing, but also it really secures those straps. So that's how that looks. Look at how nice and professional that looks. I know one of my loops are a bit shorter, but forgive me, yours are not. Yours are going to be like 100%. You know, it's not always going to be perfect, but you always try your best to make it as perfect as you can. So now I'm going ahead and I'm taking my what are these, my ruffles, right, that are cut on the bias, that take up so much material and so much space, and but it's worth it because the dress came out proper, right? So what you want to do is you're going to take your bias ruffles, and then what we are going to do is called a French seam, right? This is what's going to give us that professional, like expensive finish. So we're going to do a French seam. So for your French seam, what you want to do is you want to take your ruffles and put them wrong sides together, so the right sides are out, and then you are going to make the first stitch, right? So when you're stitching them, you don't want to make the stitch like your seam allowance. So let's say you made your stitch about 5 millimeters away. Make them shorter than you, basically make that first stitch much smaller than your seam allowance, and go ahead, cut off the excess, cut off as close as you possibly can, right? And then I'll show you what to do next. So yeah, cut off, everything is off. Then what you want to do is you're going to open that up, right? Take it to your iron, stitch it, right? Fold it like that, and then iron it, press it. Did I say stitch it? I'm so sorry, guys. Stitch it, press it with an iron, right? After you press it with that iron, we're going to take it back to our sewing machine, and then we are going to stitch it, making sure that that seam allowance is encased inside. You get it? So this is what's going to give your piece that professional, gorgeous finish. And this is also something that you can do with every pattern that you buy. If you don't have a serger and you're working with a woven fabric, this is how you would actually go ahead and finish your seams, right? And also, if you're wanting to sell these pieces and you don't have a sewing machine, you don't have to wait, you don't have a serger, you don't have to wait until you buy a serger to be able to sell this to your customers, because it's still gonna have that professional finish. Look at that. How gorgeous is that? So we're gonna do that with our front ruffles too. And when we're done with that, I'm just switching out my presser feet, and I'm putting in my rolled hem foot. And what I'm going to do is I am going to actually finish. I'm going to do the hem right now. I'm not gonna go and ruffle my ruff. I'm not gonna go and gather my ruffles, then serge. No, let's then finish the hem. No, we're going to finish the hem now, and then finish that opening, right? The opening, yeah, finish the opening, or the side seam, or the back seam, the back center seams of that first, right? So what I did for the hem is what I did for the back center seams. Okay, I'll show you guys when I'm almost done. Then now I'm going in and I'm going to ruffle it, right? I'm going to ruffle the not ruffle, why do I keep saying ruffle? I'm so sorry, guys. I'm going to gather my ruffles. So I just want you guys to see how I finished that edge. I did the exact same thing for my ruffles to finish the edge of the back piece and the front pieces, right? So right now you should be getting ready to just like be done with everything. Like you should be getting ready to get done with everything. Finish your edges, how you're supposed to finish your edges. But anyway, yeah, so you're supposed to stitch 2 basting stitches and then gather everything. I did 1 basting stitch and I realized that, you know what, I just want to do 1 and I'm going to take this risk. You saw me trying to do the second one and I was like, no, I don't have time for this. Let me try and see if I can, you know, pull it together with 1, and I managed to. When you're doing your basting stitches, you want to make sure that your stitch length is the longest that it can be and your tension is at 0. So now this is me just taking the top ruffle and the bottom ruffle, the shorter ruffle with the longer ruffle, and I am just putting them together, you know. So you'll notice that my top ruffle is facing the wrong side of my top ruffle is facing the right side of my bottom ruffle. So what you want to do is you want to pin everything. Make sure that the side seams of your ruffles are matching up. Because everything is like gathered, you won't be able to notice that they are not lining up. But just because you won't be able to notice that they are not lining up doesn't mean you need to skip this step. You know what I'm saying? So just do it. You're practicing professionalism by doing this. So make sure that those side ruffles, the side seams of your ruffles are 100% matching up. So I'm going to pin them together, and after pinning them, I am going to take them to my sewing machine and stitch them together, and voila. Now I am going to pin those ruffles onto my top. Now remember that the part of your top where you attach the interfacing, for my top I made that the lining part, I made that the back part, right? So now I'm attaching those ruffles to the front side of my pattern, right sides together, and again I am making sure to line up those side seams. Nobody is going to notice because it's ruffled, but we are doing it because we're fancy, we're doing it because we're professional, we're doing it because we want that, you know, we want to do it like how the professionals would usually do it. Actually, some boutiques don't even sell things that are 100% matched up, you know, but we're going to do it because that's the perk of being able to do everything yourself. So I am just pinning everything. Oh, and another thing to note is that when you are pinning these ruffles, your top should be laying flat, right? There shouldn't be any puckering, there shouldn't be any it should be laying flat, right? The only thing that is not laying flat is the ruffles. So you see me here making sure that is my top laying flat, that is the most important thing you can do. So now I'm gonna go ahead and just stitch my ruffle onto the front side, the front piece of my top. Just stitch.
Hello, stranger. It's been a minute since we last kicked it. just got in town, and I won't let you in this.
So the reason why I keep pulling out my pins and I keep looking under is because I want to make sure that everything is laying nice and flat. Remember I talked about how that your top should be flat. The only thing that's not flat is the ruffles. So I keep checking to make sure that I'm not accidentally folding anything at the bottom and, you know, making unnecessary mistakes. That's why I keep looking every time. And you're also going to need to do this to make sure that your things are on point, to make sure that everything is on point. On point, yeah. Yes, I use the term on point. So now look at how beautiful that is. Isn't that gorgeous? Look at how nice and just absolutely professional that is. So now let's finish the top. Let's attach. We need to attach our lining onto the top. Now if you want to be somebody that you want to be really special, you can actually hand stitch this using a blind stitch, but it's not necessary. It's not necessary at all, because this is what you're going to do. You're going to take your piece. You need to make sure the part that is not stitched is facing you, right? It's facing the top. Then what you're going to do is you're going to fold it over, right? The center. You know the center, obviously you would have notched your center. If you didn't notch your center, you're naughty. You always need to notch your center of your pieces when you are working on them. Anyway, what you're going to do is you're going to take that piece, and I'm folding it inside out, right? After folding it inside out, you'll see that naturally it goes to the back. So what I want to do is I'm going to take that back, right? And I'm going to line it up with the center of that seam. So it's going to line up with the center of the other seam. So the right side of that piece is touching the right side of my ruffles, and I am going to pin everything. Now this is very important, guys. When you are pinning, make sure that you are not accidentally catching the wrong part of the ruffle. You see how I'm pushing those ruffles in? Because if you go ahead and you stitch and like the edge of your ruffle gets caught in it, it's over for you. You have to undo that seam and then do it again. And I am one of those people that after I put a seam in, I don't want to undo it. So make sure that you don't make that mistake, because in my test piece I did make that mistake, and yeah, it wasn't fun. It wasn't fun having to undo that. So anyway, just go ahead, pin everything, and then what you want to do is just leave a small, decide that you're going to leave like a small part of it open so we can use it to turn it out, right? So I'm going to go ahead and just stitch. So I'm doing the same thing that I did when I was stitching the ruffles onto the front part. Is I keep looking under to make sure that is everything laying flat. Like I said, I don't want any unnecessary puckering or unnecessary folds, so I keep looking under. And yeah, you're also going to do the same thing, because you don't want to make any unnecessary mistakes. You know, you've come this far. Imagine just messing up the project like when you're 2 minutes away from the finish line. Like, no. Nobody wants that. So when I get to this part, I'm gonna pick my foot up, and I'm just gonna pull it out, and then I'm going to skip about, let's say, 5 centimeters. I think you can pull it off with 4 centimeters, maybe 3, but you have to be very gentle when you're pulling the top inside out. But I'm leaving about a 5 centimeter opening, and then I'm going to continue stitching the rest of it. So let's go ahead, stitch. Like I said, you guys, we're almost close to the end of the video, and like I said, most of my patterns from now on are going to be coming out with the 0.5 seam allowance. The reason why I'm saying most of them is that yeah, it's gonna be most of them, and I'm also gonna try to use the serger less, so that you guys can see how we sew without a serger, how we get a professional finish without a serger. Anyway, so you're gonna stitch that bottom seam, and you are done. You are now done. What you're going to do is you're going to make obviously some straps for the back, and also you are going to turn the top inside out. Like I'm going ahead and just stitching, cutting off those ends, just, you know, get rid of those ends, and and then turn it inside out using that hole.
Phone ringing, bitches know a big tipple. I got the hook up and there really no limit. Dead brokers in you nigga DNA. Ricky Smile is indicated with the J. Little nigga just another state case. Bury my motherfucker Chase Bank, time to bounce. Gotta count on my allowance. You niggas vicious, so I gotta rewrite it. The nigga dripping like I got $1 zillion. Got the trap jumping like time when I rebound. Then I'm out, and I never talk about it. Homie squad, but we all smoke the loudest. Rich niggas and I'm really being modest. Cause the way I do my deals, never treated like I bought this fucking house. You could DM my account. My DM 6 figures and I'm counting. 9 figures was the goal till I hit the these niggas ain't living, so bury mine with me.
When I die, put my money in a grave. I really gotta put a couple niggas in their place. Really just slapped every nigga in a race. I really might tap realest nigga on my face. Let it slap with the bass. I used to save hoes with a